Hello, everyone. Welcome to BG5 Live. We are in session 3, happens to be April 30th, 2024. And we have a guest today who I'll be introducing soon. The theme for today is empowered knowing, this concept of be the change. So we're going to be talking about individual circuitry, individual strengths, individual traits, and the themes that go along with it. So Vanessa is going to take us through the cosmic weather and give us a sense of what's been in the transits. And if you've been feeling a little melancholy, maybe a little down, a little bit of moodiness, there's a reason why. So Vanessa, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hey everyone. Let's move into the cosmic transits. So since April 27th, we have been experiencing the energy of trait 24, which is rationalization. And this sits in the conceptualization function, which is in a function that has awareness to it. And that awareness in this individual energy operates over time. And rationalization, when you have this defined, and remember, as we experience these transits, if you have this undefined, we're all going to be experiencing this energy collectively right now. And this is a great opportunity to get wise about this energy, because things that you have undefined are areas that are of potential great wisdom to you. If you do have this trait defined, then you may really be recognizing the theme of this happening right now. So with the rationalization, you are able to take the inspiration that comes in through the inspiration function and convert it into rational concepts, which will eventually be communicated. Your thoughts can often return to the same place over and over again. So this, in the I Ching, where this comes from, this is referred to as returning. So just reviewing the same things until they can be understood, screening things that are coming in, trying to rationalize. And your mind, you may have noticed that whether you have this defined or not, you're just experiencing this energy right now, that your mind is probably super active. I know when I woke up the day that this transit happened and I was doing my meditation, it was not silent, although in the high expression, you are able to silence these thoughts. This energy helps you use your mind to a great advantage when you give yourself time to watch or listen and ponder multiple times, even if it feels repetitive, but then also take time for stillness, because a lot of times that the inspiration or the breakthrough that you want actually comes when you're in a period of stillness. You do want to give yourself time. You cannot force this awareness. It does come in its own timing. This is mental energy, does sit on the conceptualization function, and there's often anxiety associated with it. And the anxiety here is that you will never know the answer, or you won't be able to explain it. And you want to just trust that the answers will come in the right time when you are just living your life. And your mental awareness does need time to transform the inspiration that you're receiving from the inspiration function into a coherent or a very conceptualized idea.
Great explanation. So I have a completely open conceptualization function. So it means I have no traits, very sensitive. So anytime these transits come through, I have to catch myself looping, like trying to figure things out, trying to figure things out, trying to figure things out. So hearing your explanation of this makes a lot of sense to me.
Thank you. And I also want to say, before we move on, knowing what is happening in the transits can be so empowering, because when you realize, okay, this is the energy that is like really shining down on us right now, and everybody's experiencing this, it's so much easier to just be like, okay, you know what, this is just the transit that's happening right now, and I can just relax. And also understanding the energy of these different traits and how they show up is so beneficial as well. So that being said, on May 3rd at 1:50 a.m. Eastern Time, the sun is going to be transiting into trait 2. And this is very much, this is the trait, it's a strength, it's a trait of the driver, and it's part of the strength of direction, which we are going to be talking about today. Now, the driver is behind the wheel of life. And this is an ability, this is very much about identity and direction. It sits in the identity and direction function. And it's about empowering your own life and the life of others with an inner sense of vision and direction. And some might say that this is actually where the higher self lives, that helps you bring that gift of empowerment and direction. When you align with your own direction, you can automatically empower others or confirm in them their own sense of direction. You can provide plans or overviews for a new way forward, and you may often find yourself directing other people towards the resources that they need to support their creative endeavors, or discover that by simply aligning with your own direction, you help other people align with theirs. So this direction is a very important theme of this transit, and providing vision. This is one of the traits or the skills in the BG5 Penta, and this can often show up as the vision, providing the plan, the overview for the business for a new way forward. And if you have this trait by itself, you're not necessarily the one, if you have it defined on its own, you're not necessarily the one that's going to be doing all the work, but you are planning the direction. And again, if you have it defined or not, you are going to be experiencing the themes of direction from May 3rd, I believe, until May 8th, when we move on to the next one. Mike, do you have anything to say about this one?
Yeah, it's interesting that I have this just as a single trait in an undefined function. So this energy is very inconsistent for me. So I have a sense of what that's like in my own life, which we can talk about, but you two have it defined in the whole 214 strength. So it'd be good to contrast our experiences of what that's like with each of us. Let's continue on with the cosmic weather.
All right, so on May 8th at 1:45 a.m., we will be moving into the trait 23. And again, as our title for today's show, this is individual energy. And this sits on the communication and action function. So this does involve expression of some of the knowings that have come through. This voice, it says, I know, and it's communicating this individual knowing, these insights that have come through that have the ability to change other people and the way other people think. This is where inspiration is finally, this inner knowing inspiration, individual inspiration is turned into language and communicated through that communication function. So in the high expression, it's really able to put language to concepts and ideas that are coming through this mental inner knowing. It's important to wait for the right timing to express your ideas in order for them to be well received. This is projected energy, so it does require recognition and invitation to really be well received. So you want to wait for the right timing. You want to wait to be acknowledged. And if you try to force your inner knowing on other people without waiting for that recognition, that invitation, your knowing might be dismissed, and that can lead to a lot of bitterness. When you are invited, the knowing that can come through will be recognized for the potential genius that lies within it, and you can really earn the respect of other people. So during this particular transit, you might, it's depending on how you're configured here, you might feel pressure to just blurt out things that you know, and it is always best to wait for the right timing to express those ideas so that they are actually well received and have the power to mutate other people.
Yeah, that's such a good description. And we're going to talk about more of the 4323 in a few minutes. But all the things that you just listed there felt so right on and so important. One of the things we'll talk about in a few minutes is the relationship between the 4323 and which is like Vanessa was saying, it's from the conceptualization to the communication. And so there's that direct knowing just coming out in very powerful words that has the ability to change people. And so 3420s, which is the pure express builder strength, we need that. We need that sort of guidance. We need that structure, but in a very particular way. And so that's something we'll share. And so thanks, Vanessa, for starting to build us on that. So we're on to our guest. This is our first guest. We feel very honored to welcome Sarah McGowan. Sarah is the administrator for the BG5 Institute. That title, administrator, does not do her justice in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I think she actually trained in the School of Hogwarts. She's a little bit of a magician. The things that she can do really super fast. Sarah has been a lifesaver. So I joined the school just last summer, and Sarah was my entryway into the school, and she did some wonderful hand holding. She kind of soothed me. She started me off. She was the one who just had this warm, caring presence while sort of shepherding me through all the process. So we welcome Sarah to the show. Yay, Sarah.
Thank you for having
Yes.
me.
Yes. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Sarah. I'm the administrator at the Institute, and I've been working here for about 3 years. My background is in education and teaching, and also administration for a K through 12 school in California. And so I've really loved being able to stick with my passion of education, but go into the private sector because it's just created so much more opportunities. And especially, I love that it's in what we teach about honoring our students as individuals. I just think that's so important. And so I really enjoy combining just my love for teaching and education, and then also learning more about human design and learning more about myself. It's just been really incredible.
Yeah, you've been it's interesting for me as a teacher, from a student perspective, you're a little bit behind the scenes, but for me, as one of the teachers, you're so front and center. I can't imagine being a teacher in this school without you. Sarah didn't mention this, but she went on maternity leave at the end of last season, the late fall, early winter. And I had a little like panic attack. It's like, where's Sarah going to be? It's
Yeah,
kind of funny. So we
that's funny
survived, but it
here.
was just barely. So here's Sarah's design. When you look at this chart, what you see here is incredible amounts of individuality. So it starts in the energy resource, moves up that column from the 14 to the 2. So very empowered identity, a lot of energy to move things forward, knowing which direction to move, based on inner response. So a strong identity about empowering both herself and the others. And so I've encountered that, like I've said, moves up to the 1-3. This is a very creative expression. So you'll notice some interesting things about her communication function, which we see the one that's black. When you look at a chart and you see the black and the red, if you're new to BG5 or design, anytime you see red, that's unconscious. So what's interesting to note about Sarah's design here is her communication function is completely unconscious. So we get this power coming up straight from the energy resource through the identity, and then we have this voice that's unconscious. So there can be this feeling of, okay, things are just coming out, and I'm not actually conscious of what it is. So I'd be curious to hear your experience, because I have an unconscious 3420. And one of the things that I've noticed over my life is that I can just blurt things out. And there's been times, especially when I've been younger, wanting to, oh, let me take that back. And there's a little bit of I've noticed this, especially in my adult life, and you can share if this is similar to you, where I modulate what I say. There's this unconscious desire to hear my words in my head before I actually say them. Do you experience that at all?
Yeah, yeah. And especially like as a young adult too, I would tend to just blurt things out a lot. And, the timing's wrong, or I wasn't asked, or um yeah, and it's not like well received. And I think like over time, like I've noticed that, and just naturally more quiet. I share less sometimes than I used to because I'm, reflective and look back. So that's interesting that you say that. And I think sometimes too, as a teacher, I would say things to my students, they were high school age. So that's like a really, important time in a kid's life. They're becoming an adult. And so there were things that I said that made a big impact on them. And I think as a teacher, you always want to make a big impact on your students, but you're not sure if you are. And that was especially true for me of like, saying things that held a lot of meaning for them, but maybe not necessarily knowing it at the time.
Yeah. One of the things about your design or a design like this, if you're an analyst or you're a student in training and you're looking at this chart, one of the things that you should see based on her individuality is Sarah has the capacity to change how people see and do things. So one of the challenges with deep individuality, which both Vanessa, myself, and Sarah obviously have, is that our ability to understand the impact is not always there. We have the ability to change how people see and do things. Now, one of the things inherent in individuality in pretty much most people's designs is this fear of change. So if we're the change makers or change introducers, it's not uncommon to face resistance to our ideas, our insights, our words, our actions. And so sometimes less is more. And so when Sarah's talking about this idea of, almost being slow to express things, it's because probably she's had the experience. So if we put this in a coaching perspective, if you see a design like this, especially with the unconscious communication function, like Sarah was mentioning, there's been times probably in this person's life, now we know it's Sarah, but where they've gotten, pushback or resistance or, someone sort of, getting angry. You can see Sarah going, yeah. So there's that. So we don't, if we're coaching Sarah, we don't want her to shut off that voice because like she said with her students, what does come out can be so deeply empowering and really change the way, students, friends, whoever can really see life. So we don't want to rob anyone of that process. But like Vanessa was talking about, the way it's done is everything. And so that's part of what we teach in BG5. So the last thing, go ahead, Vanessa.
Oh, I just also wanted to know whenever you see somebody who has their identity and direction directly connected to the communication and action function, they speak from the heart. And when they are criticized, it can be extra painful for them and can cause them to shut down. So just being aware if you have any of the strengths that connect identity and direction to communication and action, that is something that can come up for you. And again, like Mike said, this impact that Sarah has with the particular strength, especially this 1-8 and the 43-23, she really makes an impact. So again, that not shutting down and also waiting for the correct timing to speak can be such a game changer for people that have this configuration.
Sometimes people aren't like ready for it, like you have this big thing, right? And it's when you're like really confident in yourself and living your design, sometimes people just aren't ready for that. And so yeah, it's like it's all about the timing and meeting people where they're at sometimes maybe.
Yeah, well said. And Vanessa, I love that phrase that you use, speaking from the heart. That's really powerful.
And I feel very, very sensitive, Vanessa. So I love that you pointed that out.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good keynote phrase. Make a note of that. Let's just do a quick overview of what we're talking about. So this is a circuit or a thematic in the body graph charts. And so there's nine different strengths connecting 8 of the 9 functions. So you'll see with this particular thematic, the only place that's not defined is the ego, the willpower. So out of these 9 different strengths, Sarah has 4 of them. That's a lot. And so she really brings this theme, this energy into the world. So just some quick keynotes, easy to understand. Inspiration is part of this thematic. It's about tapping into your own intuitive inner knowing that often leads to unique ideas that seem to come out of nowhere. That's a huge theme of this circuit, is you don't know, and then suddenly the knowing just arises. It can feel very intuitive, very spontaneous, because it just comes. By being true to yourself, you not only find your own path, but you also empower others to do the same. Essentially, this is being a role model. Your actions and decisions can inspire others to embrace your own individuality. As cool as individuality sounds, it also means that you're different from the other types. Other types meaning the other circuits. So there's 3 main circuits. We have individuality, we have the collective, and we have the tribal. So out of those 3, individuality is the most unique in the sense that we embrace our own path in life. There's this concept of what we were just talking about, change maker. You might not immediately see how you influence others. This is a big theme for us, but your unique way of thinking, doing, and speaking can change how others operate too. So because all 3 of us have this in our design, all 3 of us have experienced that. And if you have individuality, then you've experienced it too. There's also a collective impact. Your unique traits can initially meet resistance, but are essential for inspiring change in groups. Yes. Vanessa, Sarah, would you add anything to this overall?
No, I think you covered it very nicely.
All right. So we're going to start with the 214. So both Sarah and Vanessa have that. Vanessa, why don't you tell us a little bit about this and your experience with it? We can check in with Sarah too.
Yeah, so this is what's called a generative strength, because anybody that has this entire strength defined is a builder type generator, in if you are familiar with the traditional human design language. And this is about the skill and the potential to empower the direction of others through the distribution of available resources. And resources can include money, people, creativity, just energy to get things done. And when you have this defined, and I very much relate to this, so I'll be curious to hear this from you, Sarah, as well, you actually have the potential to work really long hours, like tirelessly, when you're doing things that you love. And the doing things that you love is an important aspect of that. And doing those things with vitality, efficiency, creativity, and doing this, you can really empower other people in their own unique direction. I've heard the metaphors of this as the gate 2 is like the driver of, I know it's known as the driver as well, and gate 14 can be considered the fuel. So you bring those 2 together and you have empowered direction. So yeah, this is also very much about sustainability, having the energy to do the right work over time, moving in direction towards a goal, being able to guide others, being a way shower with your own direction and provide directions for other people's lives. And of course, the doing what you love and the money will follow. This is true for any builder type. Finding work that you love is absolutely essential and a big part of your purpose. And when you find that you really have the ability to, you have the energy, and with this particular strength, really the ability to creatively and materially sustain you. So I very much relate to this, and it's interesting because I find that Sarah actually had a big part. This whole BG5 Live thing, and the fact that Mike and I are collaborating in the way that we're collaborating is in huge part due to Sarah. And as we're on this, doing this today, I recognize that yes, Sarah really empowered my and Mike's direction of being collaborators, working together in BG5, me as Mike's assistant, and then also Mike inviting me to do BG5 Live with him. it's just, thank you, Sarah, for doing that. I just recognized today on this call that I think you're 214. My 214 sees your 214, and I think Mike's 2 sees both of ours.
Mm-hmm.
Tara, so seeing these keynotes, what's your experience of the 214?
Yeah, it's I think that the doing what you love and the money will follow is huge. I mean, I can work and work and work forever, but I can really get burnt out, right? So it's really important that I'm loving what I do and doing it without an agenda. I think that when agendas come into play, it just never works out. I think people can sense it too. It's like you can't hide it. And so I try to always just operate without an agenda. And, it's tough because the mind always wants to think about the future, and so it's like bringing myself back to the present. And like Vanessa said, it's like when I get working on a job, I really can just go until it finishes. And Mike, you've probably seen some of my emails from when I've worked over the weekend, and I just like to start from start to finish and complete the entire project. And I get a lot of satisfaction from doing that and looking at the end result.
It's interesting. I know that I created this slide and this idea of agendas. I hadn't thought about it too much, but both of you, Vanessa and Sarah, who have this 214, your energy feels very clean to me. Clean in the sense there is no agenda. And for me, I'm someone who would be very sensitive to that. So if people say like, okay, we got to do this, you can feel the agenda, but I've never felt that from either one of you two. There's this clean, clear. I'm explaining it in sort of very wishy-washy terms, but to me, it's this very tangible thing that I've experienced with both of you.
Mm-hmm.
For me, with the two, and you can tell me how you experience this when you work with other people. If I just sit and focus on someone and I'm listening to them, I'm doing a coaching session, there's to be times based on what they're saying, I can feel that a direction needs to happen, either with them or their business or their practice, or just in life. Sometimes I can feel, okay, we need to take the session in this direction. Do you experience that like this when working with other people?
I definitely do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also found throughout my life, people coming to me specifically seeking support around finding their direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting from like when I was like a young kid, even like I'd have adults come to me and ask me things like for input, guidance, direction. And I always thought that was like really interesting, and like people being comfortable sharing things with me that they probably shouldn't share with me, just, confidential information. And I always thought that was so interesting of like, why would they come to me? Like, I will keep it private, but then wow, that's a lot of trust there. And maybe it's just like this feeling of needing that direction that maybe they get. And I always try to it's not about like the agenda. It's, using my gut, I guess, and going and using that to kind of guide me. And I also feel when things drain me or when it fuels me. And then that's like my guide of, am I on track or not?
That's so simple, and it's so clear the way that you explained it. That's like a coaching framework for this particular strength.
Mm-hmm.
Just coming out of here, dropping into your body. How does it feel? And it's really clear. It's usually not wishy-washy. It's either yes, I'm really enjoying this, or no, I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
especially with this function.
Mm-hmm.
So for our BG5 coaches, consultants in training, part of what we hope you get from listening to this is sometimes our coaching frameworks are incredibly simple, that for us, we just understand just the way Sarah explained it. It's just dropping into your body. Is this something I'm enjoying or is it not? There's not a lot of in between there. And that sounds so simple to us, but I'm sure when Sarah, you really understood that and became aware of it, like, wow, this is a game changer.
Yeah. And then there's the extra layer of it though for me, because when I'm feeling melancholy, I feel
Ooh.
like it for a long time it confused me, because it's like, well, I think this is the right direction, or this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I love what I do, but why am I not feeling it right now? Am I supposed to go somewhere else? Rather than just like riding that wave of melancholy and then getting right back into it. So it I feel complex sometimes. And so like when I'm talking to other people and getting their opinions, it's difficult for me to listen to my body. So having times that I spend alone to notice how I'm feeling is really helpful.
Okay, Sarah she just opened the door. The big M words, melancholy. This is the most challenging aspect of this thematic, this circuit. And if you have it, if you have any strength in any individual, place in the design, then you know and feel and experience what melancholy is. So Sarah did a great job introducing it to us. Basically, melancholy is, are you in the mood for something or not? And when you're not in the mood for something, it's like everything just dims. Even like, I liked how Sarah brought in that nuance, even her gut response goes quiet. Vanessa, what's your experience of melancholy?
This is a great question, since I'm the only person with, oh, wait for clarity, authority. I have a defined emotional intelligence function. So
I'm gonna go up to yours.
it's been interesting to tease out my own emotional wave from the melancholy. And there's definitely been lots of melancholy, and there's a lot of things in my chart. For example, the hanging trait 60 is also can be deeply melancholic, and I have had periods in my life of deep depression. So I can very much relate to the melancholy. The other interesting thing about the individual melancholy is that it can respond so beautifully to music, which has been a very big part of my life as well. And it can be so helpful. And it's funny, when I was in high school, my best friend and I, she was a mental advisor actually, and she also had individual, her one strength was 4323. We would make depresso tapes. We literally called them that, depresso tapes, and we would just put sad music on them, and we would just listen to them and cry. And it was so cathartic and actually like beautifully healing. And I recognize now, I'm like, oh, this is one of the ways of like really being with the melancholy and also self-soothing it. So I do relate a lot to the melancholy, and also sometimes I'm like, am I low on my wave? Is this individual? Oh, is it both? So it's another fun little things in my chart that has so much going on that is sometimes challenging to tease out.
Yeah, so again, from a coaching perspective, it's really normalizing this and just letting the client know there's nothing wrong with you. This is normal. And there are times that, like Sarah was introducing to us, is sometimes even decisions, it's just not even the right time to make a decision, which Vanessa made a good point. She is an emotional decision maker. So she takes time, she waits, but both Sarah and I don't have that, although it feels like that at times.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting distinction for us. I'm going to jump back up. We are going to jump to exploring what we think of as innovative thinking. Innovative in the sense that individuality brings change. Change is seeing how to, do things in a new way. Individual change is mutative. So we can think of Sometimes when we think of change, we think of linear, A to B to C to D. Individuality in their change is mutation. So you're moving down the track, you go in A, B, C, and suddenly you're on a new track. This is unique, different. So this is the strength, 4323, efficiency. This is really powerful. We've been talking about it throughout. This will probably be the last one we share today. Sarah, why don't you take this? Why don't you share whatever you've experienced? So you can use the slide as a jumping off point and then share what your experience is.
Okay.
I'll start.
Okay.
So the strength of efficiency, the 4323. So this is innovative expression. Your insights have the potential to change perceptions and introduce new ways of thinking. Anytime you see a 4323 in their chart, and it's very common, by the way, there's three particular strengths that are more common than others: the 4323, the 3424, and the 3740. So those, you'll see that as a common theme in a lot of charts. So there's a reason why it pops up. So this is also about effective communication. It's about making your complex insights, this is the goal, understandable and relatable. Also sharing it in the right time. This is a theme we've been talking about. Knowing when to share your ideas can be as important as the idea themselves. So Vanessa was talking about that just with the 23. Finding the right timing to share ensures your ideas are well received.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because as you were talking about effective communication, I was thinking, yeah, I effective communication is something that's really important to me. I always like to try to effectively communicate. When my husband doesn't effectively communicate, it drives me crazy. So, but that's not his strength, right? And so being aware of that it's nice to know. But then there's times where I think about, I communicate my big ideas, right? My new ways of thinking, I'm communicating it, and it doesn't land, and it confuses people, and they're not picking it up. And I'm like, well, how am I not communicating this correctly? What am I doing? And I think it's all about the timing, right? Is the timing is so important so that the idea is well received, so that they can understand what I'm saying. And it's interesting because I can be very quick, and so I'll share, and it won't land. Then maybe 6 months, a year down the road, the group will say my same idea that I said,
So true, so true.
6 months to a year ago. And then I feel unappreciated. Like, hey, I contributed this, and now you're taking my idea and you don't even remember that I said it. And it's funny to see that play out in a group. And then I just love having BG5 and human design language to put these everyday situations and look at the mechanics and say, oh yeah, this is why that happened, rather than taking it personally. And so the natural genius, when you communicate your unique insights appropriately, people will recognize your genius. And so for me, that's all about the timing.
I have a question about this. Do you, in the times in the past when you have communicated in the right timing and your natural genius was received versus the times where it was misunderstood, did you experience the communication differently? Like, did it feel like it flowed easier when your genius was truly received and like it was not coming through as clearly when it was not received?
Yeah, it feels like a high almost, like you just really feel in the flow. And it's really nice. So it's definitely that feeling, like frustration versus satisfaction for me. Yeah, you can really feel it.
I find that that's the way you described that story where you sort of drop your truth bomb, it's there, and it's just not landing at all. But so the concept of you're 6 months or a year ahead of the group's timing is really profound to see it like that. So in some ways, it's not personal, right? You're
Yeah.
just ahead of their timing. You're seeing it so amazingly clear to you, but for them, it's not.
And it can lead to burnout. Like if I'm constantly like not waiting to be recognized for it, you know, or it really can lead to burnout because you think I'm willing to share, I'm willing to work, I'm willing to contribute. It's not being received. This must not be the right place or the right match for me. But it could be. It could just be that I need to wait a little bit, slow
Yeah.
down.
So one thing to note about when this comes into transit, so as Mike said, there's three particular strengths that are very common, the 4320, 33420, and 3740. And the reason they're so common is that they live in opposition of each other. So whenever the sun transits a certain trait, the earth transits the trait opposite of it. And those three particular strengths are opposite of each other. So on May 8th, when the sun starts transiting 323, the earth will transit the 43, meaning all of us will get to experience for 6 days the energy of this particular strength of efficiency. So mark your calendars for May 8th for 6 days so we can experience what this is actually like and gain wisdom for those of us that do not have this defined.
That's going to be me. Okay, when I feel
And
all
me.
this mental pressure.
Gonna be a busy week.
So as we begin to wrap up, Sarah, thank you so much for joining Vanessa and I. We loved having you. We may pull you on again. I can feel like this was a good trio.
Thank you.
Would you, either one of you, add anything as we begin to close?
I also really enjoyed this, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming on. You know, the first time when I first joined BG5 with my first quality in my public profile, I researched everybody, and I remember seeing your chart and being like, oh, I actually think I screenshotted and sent it to a friend. I'm like, look at this chart, because it was just so fascinating to me that you have all this individual empowerment, like straight up the center. And it was just fascinating to me. So I'm so excited that that I actually got to know you, and that, you know, over this time, and that we got to have this experience today, and you're actually sharing your experience, and that other people also get to learn what it's like to have such a, I mean, all our designs are unique, but this is particularly, it really stood out to me when I first saw it.
Thank you
And
for
we get
inviting
to,
me.
go
Yeah.
ahead.
It's just been great. Thank you for inviting me. I love learning about myself. Like each time we talk about my chart, or I look at my chart, or I participate in a class, I just leave feeling so much more in tune with myself. And I love that. So thank you. And if you have not taken a course with Michael or Vanessa yet, I would consider it. You can attend the first class free. They're phenomenal to work with. And I hope that you can learn as much from them as I have.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm starting a new class. My third round of foundation class is starting tomorrow. That's very exciting. Vanessa is offering career design overviews for those who are interested. Vanessa is a wonderfully in-depth researcher. So if you want the real nuances of getting a career overview, Vanessa's a great. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts about anything related to the school, you can email Sarah at office@bg5institute.com. Sarah, you are wonderful. Finally, our next show is going to be Tuesday, May 14th. Our next show is Tuesday, May 14th. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
And bye for
Bye.
now.